Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Faith Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Authentic Faith Podcast. We're kind of laughing because this is take 2. We had an audio issue. And so we're going to attempt to stay in flow. And so this happens. This is real life podcasting, everybody. So I'm here with my guests because I'm the host today. I took control last night after Moriah and I had a very... what I thought was going to be difference of opinion on the subject matter today, which turned out to be like, I actually think she's right where I am. Here's what I think though. I think,
but also no.
So listen, so first of all, I'm here with the beautiful and amazing, talented, gifted, inspiring young leader, Moriah McLeod. And I'm also here with the man behind the scenes responsible for the sound and music development and vision behind what is becoming a really, really strong worship movement with our young people, Matt Riebe. And so Matt,
just call him David, you know?
David? I think when Matt was younger, I would call him Peter.
Peter. He always called me Peter.
Yeah, he's like Peter.
Well,
which I thought was like a dig, you know? You were like,
it probably was.
You know?
Well, no, the reason why, and this is good for the episode subject matter. Today we're going to talk about healthy confrontation.
Yeah.
And so buckle up because we have a lot to discuss. So going back to what you just said, Matt, when he was younger, he would say things without thinking, and he would say them at the wrong times. He still does this quite a bit, but he's so much better than he was when he was like,
I was like, I still do that.
20, 21, 22.
Yeah.
Like in those years.
Can you share how long you've known each other real quick for the people who don't know?
So Matt Riebe and I have known each other since he was a junior in high school, and he walked into our youth group, and then I walked into his school and started doing a Bible club.
Nice.
And we just started doing ministry together. So essentially he started just hanging out in the Bible club with me, and he would do worship, and I was a youth pastor, and he got out of high school and he started, he went on a little bit of a journey and then started doing youth worship with me as a staff member at the church I was at. And that's how we started hanging out. So we've known each other. How old are you now?
28.
So 11 years.
Yeah.
11, 12 years.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's crazy.
I know. It's way crazy. I'm closer to him than his own family.
Wow, that's a bold statement,
yeah.
man.
No, I am his family. No, I don't know. But yeah, so
we've had plenty of conflicts and confrontations between
we
you
have,
two.
and that's why I handpicked Matt for this episode.
That's
because I've seen Matt and I've seen him in conflict, so it's interesting. But last night, Moriah and I, she, for whatever reason, she never gets nervous, and I don't understand it, but she was texting me all these crazy things about like wanting questions and prep stuff and all this. And normally she just flows, but she's really
confrontation.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's the subject that was making her nervous or what it was, but normally that's why I took over as host, because I'm like, Moriah, you're going to sit in the discomfort.
We are always back and forth between, do we provide questions and points or do we not? And lately we've just been flowing and talking. So I'm like, this is a big one. What do we talk?
It is a big one. But
yeah.
So like Moriah said last night that she loves confrontation.
Did I know? Let me see.
You said it. I love confrontation.
Maybe I did.
I responded by saying, anyone who loves confrontation, or maybe I just stated this. I think I stated it. And you said you disagree. I just stated this. I said, anyone who loves.
I said, I'm going to challenge that.
Okay, so what did I say? What was my exact statement?
That's when you said people who love confrontation are usually spiritually immature and hurt others. I understood right away what you said. But I was like, I think we need to talk about it.
Because what did I say above that? What's the difference? Is there a difference between being a confrontational person and a person
who confronts issues?
And a person who confronts issues.
It's funny because I agree with all this, but I just was like trying to make a point, like, that's what I want to talk about. I'm going to challenge that because let's talk about it. Is basically.
So do you actually love it? Because to me that is a weird thing.
No.
Because my response was and listen, I accept you even if you're weird.
Thank you.
You're all good. You're welcome.
I don't love it. I just know what the outcome can be.
You know what else I said? I said if you love it the way I love Jesus, then you worship it. I said I love my kids.
And I was like,
I love my wife. I love the Lakers. I love
So you worship the
Mexican
Lakers.
food. No, I'm just saying there's things in my life I could categorize as love. I'll say that I have to do confrontation, but I don't love it, And
it's hard. I mean, I'm not like drooling for it.
Well, if you say you love it, then you're obviously longing.
I do love the outcome of like peace and connection.
100%. So, and the other thing was I said, because we're going back and forth for a minute, is I said, what did I say about?
I don't know. You said a lot of stuff.
I said a lot of stuff. We're going back and forth. But anyways, said I confront politicians, pastors. I've confronted principals, teachers, speak out on issues, defied health mandates, overcome fears, spoken to anxiety. Because I love people, I have to do that. Does that make sense? I don't love doing that. The act of confronting for me, I just don't like the tension. And you said, what's interesting, because I'm going to go, this is good, because we didn't even get into the rest of the text in the first take. Take 2, we get to get in a little more context.
About the
she said, because I was wanting to actually confront what you said about heaven comes through confrontation, through tension.
Yeah.
Because she said heaven comes through tension, because I said you love the tension.
Living in the tension. Has nothing to do with conflict. That's
just I said no. I said
heaven. If you love confrontation, then you love tension, and he. And I said, I live in the tension. The tension is where heaven comes.
And I said, no, heaven comes from Jesus. I said that. Me too. That's what I was saying.
I hate it too. But
heaven comes from Jesus.
Dude, when somebody walks in and goes, "Hey, Brad, I have to talk to you. I need to talk to you."
It's the worst.
That's the worst, man. There's nothing worse.
Have you ever been called into a meeting, Matt, and you don't know what it's about, or had someone in authority over you?
Dude.
Yes.
Who calls you in and says, "Hey, we need to talk."
Yeah.
That looming conversation, doesn't it?
And then they're like, "We're gonna talk at 3. I have a few meetings until then. You can just think about it until then."
That just reminds me. This is horrible and controversial, but this reminds me of like the parent, like, go to your room. You're going to get a spanking. Just like waiting. Dude. And waiting. And sometimes they never did show up. And sometimes they did.
And you're just racking your brain.
And you're
what
like,
did I do? What did I do? What have I done? Like,
I was talking a different subject, the tension of living here, but living in heaven. And that you said tension, and I was like, that's the moment of glory. Like, here, but heaven come. That's a different subject. And that's when I was like, that's what I live in, which sucks. But it's like,
I get it. And so that was my challenge, is like being a person who does confront things, just speaking accurately. Like, I confront a lot of stuff on a regular basis. Yeah. A lot of issues, or like small course corrections, or things that you have to just work out, as a leader. And you guys could probably verify this for people. Like, I am a very strong leader in a lot of ways, but I also create space for conversation.
Yes.
Very good at that. So like, and then also like my confrontation doesn't, I try not to prepackage punishment into confrontation.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, so it's like, not like I used to when I was less spiritually mature, like have an agenda as you come in, like, hey, I'm going to remove this person or whatever. If it's bad enough, you have to do what you have to do. Yeah. But, like now I come in with one agenda, like, so just speaking into this, so like Matthew 18 says, go talk to somebody. And it says, and if you
confront them,
go talk to them in person, like go talk to them. And if you talk to them and you guys come to at least a space of compromise, or like whatever, like you come to a good place, it says you've won your brother, your sister. And then if things escalate, you have to do some other things. But like, I try not to pre-package an agenda into that. It's more for the purpose of discovery and connection.
That's good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Matt, when was the last time someone confronted you, or how do you feel about confrontation?
Confrontation.
I
like that.
Give us your take on it, because I handpicked you for this episode because we've been through a lot together.
When was the time that you guys had an issue with confrontation?
Oh, I remember a time with Matt.
Us? Yeah. Oh, him and I.
Fun, a story.
I remember a time with Matt.
Oh, he's ready.
He was a youth pastor.
This is you right now.
I'm not gonna give details. I'm not gonna put your stuff out there.
No,
I'll just
you
say
were just like, oh, I got it in the tank. It's ready to go.
Do you remember that? Matt remembers the scenario. They were going on a youth camp out or something, and I don't remember what happened, but it was like Matt was late, and you came in, and I was like fuming mad because all these people were waiting on you. I don't know if you remember this. It was like 6 years ago when you were a youth pastor.
Was that at the Goodyear building?
Yes. And I don't know if you remember, there was a camp out, and I go, dude, it never again. I go, do this, and then we're gonna have a conversation about your job or something. Like essentially, like it was like that rough.
I'm trying to remember.
You were super late, but I remember.
Put it out. Like,
I put it out, but because the reality is, no, we had.
I mean, like
we've known each other so long and done ministry so long. You don't stay with somebody that long without A, being able to confront, 2, having some sort of healthy dynamic in confrontation, and B, being able to resolve conflict well and like be able to have mutual honor and respect for one another.
So maybe that wasn't the best moment for you guys.
I'll say it was. I'll say in moments of confrontation, it's messy sometimes. Like it's like you're mad or something happened, a ball was dropped or whatever. You've clearly asked somebody to do something and didn't do it, and like in that as a leader of an organization or a ministry or whatever, it's like for me, you do have to hold people accountable. That's the reality.
Yeah. And the culture that we were in at that point too was kind of like I would be doing a certain job and then Brad would be held to a certain level of like a standard, and so he would answer for that as well. So
there's pressure on me. It's a middleman,
and it's especially when it gets into church stuff. Like it's like families in the church and people that are important and families that we want to love and love well. And so like when me on one hand is like showing up late for something like that and like kind of disregarding like people's time and stuff like that. That's I know Brad fairly well, and I know that when people's time is like wasted when they're waiting on you, like that kills Brad. Like he wants to be the person, like when they walk in, it's like the table's set. You know what I mean? Like he wants people to be like when people walk in, they're just like, oh, I have to do nothing. And that's beautiful. I love that.
Well, yeah. It just depends on the situation. Like the reality is like time, I believe I have a healthy respect for it because like just speaking about time, and confronting stuff. Like there's 2 things that probably I highly emphasize like in leadership accountability is time and communication, and on those 2 things, like I'm okay with late, but I'm not okay with late without explanation or late without communication. You know what I mean? Like I'm okay with 10 minutes late. I was at the post office, or I'm okay with, hey, the toilet's leaking and I've got a plumber coming out. I'll be there at 11 and I was supposed to be there at 9. If it's something happens, you can't change it. It is what it is. I got called into work. I can't be there at all. Like we have a lot of those, but I need an explanation. It just ghosting is not an option.
Yeah, totally.
So do you have something, did you want to share? Sorry, we kind of like hijacked.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
okay.
I don't remember what was the question?
Have you had to confront somebody younger or anybody?
So
actually?
you also, along with leading, so I'll set the table for him.
Leading the ministry?
So that you can walk right into it and it's ready to go. Perfectly set up, set the table for you. So you lead not only in our ministry, but you're also a high-level manager at one of the biggest restaurants in the state. So like
it's up and coming for sure. The restaurant, it's Lure Fish House, I'm just a manager there, and we have to deal with conflict and
that's what I'm saying on a regular basis
every day and stuff. I mean, like just recently, like not to get into details, but we had to deal with like an employee who said something really inappropriate to another employee. And I mean, restaurant, culture is pretty gnarly. So you kind of have to deal with people in all states of life. You have people that are like, elderly men that are servers serving alongside like, 17-year-old high school girls. And so you have to hold those, you have to hold the dynamic very strictly, and you can't leave a lot of room.
A younger manager holding older people accountable?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this level of reverence that like the position that I hold has in that like community, so it helps. and like the other managers alongside. Like something that I've noticed that like that united front of the managers together is very strong. And when something is like worth communication with an employee or things like that, like we do it 2 at a time, like with 2 managers present, to like one to witness, the other to like communicate. We have verbal written documents and things like that. These are like ways of opening the communication, and like it's like, here's what happened, and here's what was communicated to this employee, and that's forwarded to corporate, and the employee has an opportunity to scan in something that they write as a response. And but it's done. It's also done at the end of their shift, so they don't have to like go and work the rest of their shift and things like that.
It's so different than what we do here.
It's very different.
Yeah, it's honestly so it's funny because I remember I've been referencing this as like the difference between working at a church and working at a restaurant, like and how there's a lot of things that are similar, but
serving people and all the other stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then there's things like when we talk to each other, like as managers, we're like, okay, cool, we're gonna change the standard of like our bread service, and we're gonna put the bread into the oven, and we're not gonna rip it apart. We were ripping it apart before, now we're gonna leave it together. And we all go, okay, cool. And like some people are like, I love that, and then other people's are like, I hate that. And like any work culture or any workplace, anytime you institute or institute like a standard of like practice and how we're all going to do things together, there's going to be people that agree and disagree, and there's stuff that's at our church like that, where like where when we institute things, we're just like, we're going to do this now, and people are like, I don't know. The difference between those two places is that like at the restaurant I can go, I disagree, and nobody goes, oh, let's talk about that, Matt. Let's talk about your heart. Why, have you prayed about that? Like the bread needs to be ripped apart.
No,
do you
I'm
really
with
think
you.
that,
I sometimes I that's why I almost dislike confrontation so much, because if I didn't have the whole spiritual component, like having to lead people spiritually, I could just deal with facts and be very pragmatic. And part of me, I think so, like understanding who I am as a leader, like I think like a CEO.
So funny.
I think like a CEO. I look at, but it's not, I'm definitely not CFO. Like I can be CFO, but CEO, I think about vision and progress and movement and culture and all this stuff. Like I'm thinking that way. So like, it would be so easy for me to say, hey, you're affecting culture, I got to let you go. Yeah. Like, if the culture's not right at the table, like I can't have you at the table because I don't feel you're creating,
hey, this is inappropriate. You can't say things like that. Yeah. Like, But we do a lot of that. But that's why, like, so what you have to do is I actually remove the punishment piece out of it, which makes it really, you can't control people with fear, because the Bible says, perfect love casts out fear. So you have to actually remove fear of man from the culture. And the reason why most pastors and churches don't do it is because fear of man actually allows you to control culture. Rather than letting the Holy Spirit develop culture. Does that make sense? Like,
that's so sick.
It is
for a church to be using fear of man and just fear to like
holding jobs over people's heads and this culture? Kind of thing. Like,
let's just say that for a second. That's disgusting.
So
that's so bad.
It is.
We're trying to break that off of people. That's okay.
And I want you to speak into this, because Mariah, she loves confrontation so much. I think that you need to speak into this. But like, I have had to fire people in the church. And it's rarely good. Normally it's tough. Normally it's like painful, and people assume things about it or whatever because it's not public knowledge. Like the Apostle Paul, like we're just talking about, like he would put people in front of the church. He's like, hey, kick him out of the church and let everybody know why. We don't do that for whatever reason today. I don't understand, like, because it would be much easier, like, hey, so I know you guys think that I'm a bad guy because I did this, but actually I've talked to this person 10 times about this issue and they've chose to not do anything with it.
At that point,
there was an expectation and I communicated it multiple times and they didn't do it, so therefore they're removed from ministry. And then if you were a healthy church rooted in healthy biblical values, you'd understand that. You say, yeah, there's an expectation and you didn't meet that expectation. So the reality is, like, you're no longer employed.
You don't fire somebody at a restaurant, like any place, until it's over and over. Like they've shown, like I got write up, and then more and more things, and then they're fired. Like have it right. Like that's my experience in out there. It's like, It's not just, you're not just fired.
Church work is
hard.
It's hard. It's harder in a lot of different ways.
Involved.
There's a lot of grace and love, but there's also like people and hearts and beliefs and people also equate their spiritual health with their ability to perform well at a church. And I don't think that's always lined up perfectly.
Dude, break into that. That is so good, because some people are gifted, and because they're gifted, they think there's positions available, and gifting alone does not help create healthy culture. Gifting alone actually creates more performance if gifting isn't carried with high character.
Yeah.
So like churches that only focus on like hiring talent, like we're not, I was just talking with somebody, we had like 3 or 4 pastors who are not in ministry at our church receiving Sunday. And any of these pastors would happily jump in with our church. And I've had many conversations with them. The interesting part is like there are churches begging for staff members on like job search websites and all this stuff, like looking for worshipers, looking for all this, begging for it. We've never, ever done that. Why? Because culture, when you focus on a healthy culture, leaders are attracted to it, right? And so like if we would focus on actually being healthy people, then you don't have to compromise to get talent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how it becomes unhealthy. That's how it becomes performance. Then it's like, oh, who sings the best? Who's the best preacher? Like we don't talk that way at our church, really. Like it's who's positioned.
Like,
that we talk about.
Who's the anointing on also? Maybe they're not the best singer, but like, wow, God's doing something on her.
Yes.
And she's just like letting it out, and our church needs that right now. Or but she also has a great voice.
And it's also the elbow room to fail.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've got the room to like do something that might not be like perfectly polished, but it's like where is the Spirit of God in that, and I think it's good to like to hire certain positions, and I think it's good to like hire people that like are equipped for the position.
Yeah, we might be there someday. We might have to go and search out a specialized position for something, or maybe there's a worship leader out there someday that we have to search for, I don't know, or maybe there's a musician specially you have to go after. I don't know, but I just know that like in general, culture attracts healthy people, good culture.
I mean, back to the restaurant thing, that kind of it lines up well with this too, because it's significantly, exponentially more worthwhile to hire from within for positions that have like open up at the top, like serving is top of the food chain, but we don't hire servers in from anywhere without experience. They have to get in at an entry level position. They have to be an oyster bar back. They have to be a bar back or like a busser.
That's so good.
They have to do those things to enter in, and then they learn the entire like restaurant. A lot of time, like they spend a lot of time learning how that restaurant flows, and then they get promoted like that, as opposed to being like, let's like call out somebody who might have worked at a different restaurant and bring them in. They have a lot of practices, might be good, might be bad.
But they don't know your culture.
You have to trust takes time.
Yeah. And people that have like been hired and like walk, like as they walk up, like these are the people that end up being managers. These are the people that end up like going into like I said forever that I would never ever be a manager, but I was hired as an oyster bar back, like an oyster bartender, and like that position taught me the rest of the restaurant. And I just honestly, I started to see like the hands and feet of Jesus at a restaurant, and I was like, I think that Jesus would totally work.
You know what my major frustrations with this is, because I want to connect it back to confrontation, because we're talking about healthy culture. Healthy culture comes from healthy confrontation and not being afraid. So although I don't love it, like Moriah, I do it, and I'm going to keep pinning her down with this. No, but
I do love it.
No, it's okay to love it. I think what Moriah loves, and we want to break into this and not go so micro, go a little more macro, and look at like societies and injustice and just right and wrong, and like what's happening in the world. Like Moriah loves confronting those things. And so I know you, and I know what you're talking about. But one thing is, we move more into what Moriah can bring to this in that realm. I get frustrated as a pastor when I have to confront people for things that are obvious. Because people will not do their own self-confrontation. I get mad. That's one of the
check
most
in with yourself.
That's one of the most frustrating things in leadership, I'd say, is everyone can see it. And if you looked in the mirror clearly and crucified the narcissist just for a second to see the blemishes, I just want you to see the blemishes. Like, I see my blemishes. And that's why I lead with actually presenting my blemishes. Like, here's the broken parts of me. Here's the imperfect areas of my life. But let's talk in a healthy way about where we need to be, right? If someone can't even see the blemishes, and then I have to go and like remove the fog, like if you ever get in the car and the windows are, you have to like take a napkin and clear it up a little bit before you hit the road. Like if I have to, like sometimes, so like just moving in that, like some people are stuck with foggy windows, unable to move forward in organizations and ministries or life in general, just simply because they won't clear their vision, be able to see things as they are. Jesus said that if you're going to take someone's speck out of their eye, he says, you hypocrite, look at the log in your own first. This causes a fear of confrontation fear of confrontation before you actually do self-evaluation. Does that make sense? And I think if we did more self-evaluation, we would need less confrontation.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny that you said that, because I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that before this, and I was like, there's levels of confrontation with others, and like when you have to communicate with somebody else, when you have to like confront an issue. But there's also issues internally. There's things that are going on in your own head, and like I think that an unhealthy person does not address things that are going on in their head. Like the only way to move forward is like to confront issues and things that arise in you, and like have people to talk about it, and like things to like places to put it.
Yeah. I had one just recently where a person I was giving room for a person to kind of work through what I believe scripturally is a sin issue. I didn't want to overreact to their decisions and stuff, and I'm giving space for someone to kind of figure it out, and I had internally done the work to think like, okay, so you're an imperfect, like there's areas of your life where you fell, and that all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, once this issue and this decision that this person was making began to influence and affect others, it changed my position on it. Does that make sense? Where you have to go and like, okay, so now this is no longer this person wrestling with something. It's beginning to leak out, like metastasize in a way where it's now affecting other parts of the body. Right.
Yeah.
And so, in that, it changed the urgency of it. Does that make sense? Where like I'll be really patient for people who are processing and wrestling and like going through things, but then when they begin to create theology around it and allowances for it and actually teach it, you put yourself in the position of like false teaching. For it. Yeah, false teaching, and it says that teachers are held to stricter judgment. So then you have to actually talk to a person, potentially about an issue that you would otherwise not talk to them about if they would have just done the self-evaluation to say, hey, maybe I shouldn't go like announce this stuff to the world. And maybe I should just process myself for a season to figure out exactly what I believe and honor the culture. But yeah.
So how do you do that?
So I think I watch, number one, you love people. So I think it all has to be rooted in love. Like I said, I do confrontation, but I love people. So because I love people, I want to give people room to work things out. Right. There's been times in your life, where you've been going through things, and I could speak for both of you actually, where you guys have been going through seasons where maybe you're a little more wiry than others. Like you're kind of out there.
Yeah.
I try not to overreact to a season, knowing that seasons change.
That's good.
Does that make sense? And so I try to really take the time to be patient. Where I really have to get involved is when it affects other people. You know what I mean? And like in that, I have a responsibility over the church and the culture to go in and say something. You know what I mean? If somebody is going around and like, let's just say somebody's out like I don't even want to get into specific sense. I'll just say there's a sin.
Partying.
I'll say, okay, thank you. So like drinking publicly, right? Like I don't have a problem with it.
Getting
like in a
hammered.
healthy way, whatever, right? Like, but like, let's say like someone in our, like,
can you imagine?
The Bible doesn't say you can't have a drink. So like in that, like it would be me exceeding what's written to go and try to confront someone for
Creating
having
rules.
a drink. It would be creating religion and this other stuff. However, if you catch patterns and like just habitual, and then it's like forming community around, and you're like, oh, I'm going to invite you guys to all, and this is what we're going to do. Like celebrations, occasions, all that stuff is a totally different category. Like, so I watch and it's like,
it's affecting people, how they're behaving.
Yeah.
Or like hurting people.
For example,
when they're drunk.
I had, this is a real scenario. And I'm sorry, Mariah, I haven't
No, I'm good.
addressed it. Okay.
I'm
So
chilling.
like, I know a guy in our church who was an alcoholic. Who was doing really well in church, in discipleship, coming to Bible studies. We were doing great together. Had a real encounter with Jesus, probably 3 or 4 years sober. Nobody else knew his story but me and a few other close friends. Some church guys did a camping trip, and they invited everybody to go, right? And so this guy's like, I can go. And I had a real conversation with him. I said, they're going to be drinking. I said, you need to think about this. I just want to be real. He goes, no, I think I got it. I got self-control. I said, okay, now let it go. He goes out on the boat. They're wakeboarding and stuff. Someone who doesn't know his past hands him a beer. He goes ahead and drinks it, ends up drinking 2 or 3 that day, thinks he's good. Slowly over the next several months, he begins to walk away from church. And I don't understand why. And now a year and a half later, has died and overdosed, and his funeral was 2 weeks ago. This is a real situation. After 3 or 4 years sober,
not overdosing from the alcohol.
From another substance.
Yeah.
But it's like
But
a
still.
gateway kind of thing.
My dad, when he would get out of prison, would begin coming home. Where the compromise began is he would come home and bring a 24-ouncer for both of us when I was in high school. He'd come home, sit on the couch, crack it open, father-son time, and we'd do it. I began to realize as I got older, that was the beginning of the cycle. That slowly you deteriorate, slowly like your sobriety change. Like when you're inebriated, you begin to make different decisions, and it's never enough for some people. Some people can have a glass, some people can not have a glass.
So confronting that. Yeah.
So being able to know what to confront and when to confront requires that you know people and that you're connected to people and you really understand people's story and where they're at and like their tendencies, like where you say, hey, I know that you're prone to this or whatever, so be cautious. You know what I mean?
The messy thing, people still do what they do, and you're like,
I know.
But you can't control anybody.
And my dad would go from 24-ouncer to criminalizing drug enterprises like counterfeit, meth, robbing drug dealers on the streets, leaving his family in prison for decades. And it all started from breaking a sobriety in the can. So how do you confront? I don't know. This is turning into a wild podcast, but like knowing when to, you ask like, how do I know? Like it's very complex and it requires knowing people.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I mean, I don't know if you have something to say.
I get frustrated. I don't love
because you have some of this in your life too. Like
something. There's a few people in my mind, but I'm not obviously.
Because maybe it is for you with family too. Because you had a major breakthrough with confrontation. I know you and I talked about it.
Which one? Just personally with everybody. Like, I've come to the place where I am like, you're going to do what you're going to do. I probably won't believe you, but I love you. Is that weird? It's like, I love you, but some people I'm like, I don't know if I can believe you. Like, I don't know. And you're going to
I get that. Do you think that some of your spiritual gifting causes you maybe to, now that you're at that place, it's black or white where you say like, hey, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to watch your actions because you're discerning things.
I'm like finding the gray, I would say, where I can love you, but I don't agree with, or maybe you're living,
that's so good.
You're not living in sin. Maybe you're living like fine, but like, I don't know. And it's not my job to like, are you okay? It's not my job. I gotta let go of that. So it's like, I love you, but.
So were you always someone who was able to confront?
No.
That's what I'm saying. So like, how did that process go?
In my family, especially, we are like not confronters. Like,
isn't
that interesting?
So like I said, like Cold Wars existing in the family. You know how many family feuds are happening and nobody even knows there's a problem?
Yeah, family's a mess,
dude.
Yeah.
I'm not,
step it on
no
it.
way that I'm like ever gonna like get back into my house and like not talk to the person that I have like issue with. Like, I'm not gonna sit there and be like on the like making stuff in the kitchen, like, you know, putting stuff down, like passive aggressive, dude. Like when I lived with Cody, my buddy Cody, we would like, I don't know, I would just like, okay, all right. There was this one time, I left all the lights on, all the time. I sucked at turning off the lights, okay? Like, and we had like a lot of light switches in the house, like different areas, whatever. And I remember I got a text, and I looked down, and it's from Cody, and it was a video of him walking through the house, turning the light switches off, dude.
That is healthy confrontation, Cody.
And
At least he said it.
It pissed me off, dude. I like messaged him like, that is the most passive aggressive thing I've ever received.
That's not passive aggressive. That's direct.
That's what he said.
Direct.
I still disagree.
Passive aggressive would be like,
he should have said, turn off the lights as he was doing the video. Maybe.
Passive aggressive would be you're in conversation with the boys after surf, and all of a sudden somebody says something about like electricity costs. So like, yeah, well, ours is astronomical because I live with somebody who doesn't care.
Somebody doesn't like to turn off the lights.
So, like that's passive aggressive.
All right.
Direct
maybe
is,
it was direct. Maybe it was. I feel like it was. That's what it felt like. But he did directly message me and talk to me. But yeah, anyway,
that's straight up confrontation. That's healthy.
But we squashed it because something was said. Yeah. So like,
I have another example with roommates because that's more
good
recent.
One.
Roommates are rough. Oh, sorry guys. I need to shake it.
This one is groundbreaking, apparently.
Nice. Got
That was
it.
good.
Go.
So my first interaction with like confrontation with roommates after being out of my family, I was with two like 18-year-olds in Reading, and they would not wash their dishes. And they know this. We talked about that. We joke about it now. But
this is a roommate issue, right? All our people who have roommates out there right now, you know the struggle.
I was
and
like
it's real.
20. How old was
dishes. That's it. That's
I
all.
was 23.
That'll solve 80%.
No, okay. So I was 23 and they were 18, and they would leave their dishes sometimes for like a week, or 2 weeks, and it was just like
gross.
I would wash my own, and we were learning Brave Communication, the series from Dan Fairley, Brave Communication, and I remember trying to apply it, and I was like, okay, I gotta apply this. I can't just like ignore it, because what I would do is like just do my own and then whatever, ignore it, and then just like be frustrated. And so I was like, hey, you guys. And they're like, oh gosh, this is like serious. And I'm like, I need to talk to you. This is so silly. Like, I don't even want to say anything, but also I feel like you guys don't really, this is probably a lie. I said, it's probably not true, but I feel like you don't care about me when you leave your dishes because I'm the one who ends up doing them. And probably not true, but I need to say it out loud. Like,
wow, that's good.
I feel like you're disregarding, like you just expect that I'll do it. And I don't want to do your dishes all the time. And I want to like, that's just what I need to tell you. And I just kept it simple. And they're like, oh my gosh, we had no idea. We'll do our dishes. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay, cool. Thanks. That'd be great. And then we all just started doing our dishes. It was like easy.
Yeah. Have you ever had a case built up in your mind? I know everybody in this room has had something built up in your mind that becomes so intense and so big. It's like boiling over. And if you don't learn to actually do something with it, and the problem is people let it build up too much.
Dude.
Rather than having that. I believe so. So like in ministry, like you talk about, like I said, time, communication, and then also there's one more that I really hold accountable. It's like coming to the table ready. Mm-hmm. Like take care of your stuff. Come to the table ready. We all have stuff. And so, but in communication, and I think confrontation, active feedback is critical. You have to have if I don't have active feedback about an area of ministry, it builds up in me because I don't know where they're at. Like I've assigned somebody something and I have no report on it. Right. So it like builds up or whatever, or like maybe you have a conversation with somebody about doing the dishes and it just doesn't happen, or the lights or whatever. And it's like active feedback, like, hey, can we talk about that again? Like I was kind of serious when I said that. Like, is this just something like, is there an area broken in you that like, you just don't want to do dishes? Like, let's talk about that.
Okay. So yeah, most of
you don't want to turn the lights on or off?
Referencing like ministry, but most of mine are like family, friends, roommates, be dating, like that kind of stuff. But like, what was the other thing I was gonna say? Oh, everyone has their own code book. So like in a relationship, like you slamming a dishwasher, the other person is like, oh my gosh, they're angry. Why are they angry at me? And you're just like, I'm just slamming the dishwasher. But they don't know that. And then you keep doing it every day. You're slamming the dishwasher shut. And they're like, oh my gosh, like in the same kitchen, slamming it shut every day. And then one day that person is like, oh my gosh, why do you keep slamming this? Are you mad at me? Like, what's going on? And they're like, no, I'm just making sure it shuts, like, or whatever, something so stupid, like the trash not being full, you know, like, or is it full or is it not full? Everyone
or
has
taking the trash out. Like overflowing. Like, have you ever had a confrontational situation because you put trash on top of trash?
But exactly, some people, because sometimes if
this is getting very practical and ordinary, and I love it.
But the thing is, everyone has their own code book in their mind and triggers and stuff from growing up. And like for that person, when their dad slammed the dishwasher, they were being passive aggressive to their mom, saying like who knows? There's signs like that.
What we were talking about,
and it's not a big deal, but you just have to say
it.
What is that?
Don't give me a body language.
And you're like, no, I'm not. Yeah. I'm not mad. I'm not being aggressive. I'm just like slamming a
because
shut.
Then you lie. So this is the thing. So they may have made a mistake, but then by you not saying how you really feel, you're lying. They say, "Are you bothered?" You say, "No, I'm good." That's immature.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to actually, like, if you're bothered, say it. Why am I bothered? I'm bothered because, okay, so I realize I'm tired today, number one, so things are probably bothering me. So do the self-evaluation, because as we're going to land the plane on confrontation, it begins with self-evaluation. So
why are you triggered by something?
Yeah, I'm a little bit, and I do see a habit, and I'm trying to figure out, like,
not everyone is so self-aware all the time, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to be, like, upset, and you're like, I don't know, but I don't like this person right now, and I'm upset about it. And then when they go, hey, what's wrong? It's not always productive to go, well, you're bothering me today. You suck.
But you got to find a way to say it, though, because the reality is, because then what happens is, so listen, this is the integrity part, because if you say, I'm not bothered, I'm fine.
It just builds bitterness.
It builds, and you just lied, and you've not solved the problem at all.
Right.
And so now you've compounded sin on top of sin.
But what if you say, hey, I'm not okay. I need time to think about it.
That's
great.
Worse.
No.
Well, no.
If you're like pissed at somebody and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, not yet.
It's okay
but,
to say
it's not worse.
So
yes,
like, I think she's right about this.
I'll get back to you, and then you think about it intentionally.
Yeah, but like saying I'll get back to you is like, don't say anything to me until you're ready to talk to me about it.
Well, it's just your opinion.
Are you kidding me? That's the thing where it's like,
you're right, but listen, no. There's a compromise in the middle.
Not like that.
That's what it is.
No.
So it's the same thing.
This is getting very confrontational right now, but listen.
And I need to talk. It's just like, there's something, I'm not sure what it is, but I need to think about it.
So listen,
Like with another person. It's like what's happening inside of me.
Let me find some common ground here between you two. I gotta confront right now. This is a good topic. I love it.
I totally disagree with that.
So listen. So when you say I'm fine, or you say that's like passive aggressive. I'm fine. Like, we know you're not fine. I've known you for a long time. We know you're not fine, right? If you know this person.
Okay.
So then, but if you say like I'm not okay and I'll talk about it later, that's kind of like
it's your attitude, and
that is, I agree with Matt. That's leaving too much suspicion and like all that. It's like, no, if there's an issue, let's at least tell me. I think there's a place in the middle. But it has nothing
to do with I'm punishing you. It's like, I'm not fine, but I don't have words to explain it, and it has nothing to do with you. It's like, I'm going through something. I say that all the time.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm going through. I'm going through something.
No, I agree with you. But what I would say is, if it is actually involving the person, then what you say is, I would say, agreeing with you, like somewhere in the middle, because I'm going to be a peacemaker now.
There's a time for both.
So what I say is, you have to at least give them enough to know what you're talking about. Does that make sense? Like, you can't just say, I'm not in a place to discuss it. Well, discuss what? Can we at least know what's bothering you? Like, so I'm bothered by what's happening in the honor in our relationship, or the trust in our relationship, whatever. I feel like these things
sucks too, though. Then you leave them hanging. And
these things happen. These things happen, and I don't quite know how to respond to it. Right? Like, just saying that, like, you broke my trust in an area, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about it.
Yeah,
that's gonna throw them, but at least they know what you're throwing about. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can say like, hey, I'm not ready to fully dive into it, and they're gonna probably try to pull you into it. But if you're a strong person, you stick to your process.
You know what I do now.
That's what I'm saying. So stick to your process, but at least give them enough so that they know it's not like suspicious.
Well, yeah,
working off of like the roommate thing too. Like nowadays, my roommate Matt Linman, him and I live together, and we share a house, and we have dishes, and we have all those kinds of things, like I did with Cody before. But I'm a different person now, and now, like, because I've grown, and it's been a few years, and you know, I'm just a different person, and like nowadays, I'll walk up to him and say, "Hey, how are things? How are, you know?" Am I doing
you two?
Yeah.
Wow, that's self-evaluation. You did that.
That's great.
I swear. I went up to him.
Circling the wagons, making sure you're good. Hey, are we good?
How are things going? Like, have I done anything? Yes. Like, what's going on? And genuinely, he goes, just do your dishes. I'm not kidding. It's that easy. It's simple. Okay, and I'm like, cool. Okay, I'll do my dishes. And I went and I did the dishes. And like, but like when there's dishes in the dishwasher or dishes in the sink, whatever, it's like the dishes. It's not my dishes and his. It's like we just accept the house is ours, and we just handle it.
So understand this. So as we begin to land the plane, whenever you're with roommates, you keep thinking, you're like, one day I'm going to get married, and like I'm going to finally have a house to myself and all this stuff. You realize that like you get more roommates who have different habits, different values on cleanliness and organization and all this stuff. And like, so like Shannon and I, we never fight about anything. Ever. We never disagree about anything ever. We're perfect. No. Being married to somebody, you get the same thing again, but this time you can't move out. There's a whole other discussion about confrontation. There's no like, it's a covenant relationship, so you're actually forced to deal with self-evaluation at a more intense level because you don't want to have a bad marriage.
And that's the people who just keep drifting because they're like, we just don't want to talk about it.
And then you find this all the time because what holds them together for our married couples out there? The kids and their obligation. And then what happens when the kids leave? Marriages disintegrate. Why? Because they didn't work towards connection throughout the course of their marriage. And they just went through the motions and
that's good.
Out of obligation, didn't confront. So being a passive person, not confronting things with active feedback along the way, like heart checks in a marriage, self-awareness too. Heart checks in a relationship, heart checks with a roommate where you go, hey, did I do the dishes? And the self-evaluation portion is critical for even stuff outside of our personal lives, because then you'd say, like, what do I do about President Biden? I don't agree with his policies. What do I do about the Trump supporters? Whatever them. What do I do about the city of Los Angeles and this problem? What do I do about the school system? Connection. Like, how do I do this? Because right now I'm mad. Like, this is a culture now where everybody's mad, and it's like we're raging against the machine, and our idea of confrontation is I'm gonna post about it. I'm gonna do a video about it. You did nothing. Can I just be real? Like, you posting a little social media video about it, nobody's listening to you. Like, and the sooner you realize that, the more peace you'll have.
It's so true.
Like, I'm not saying don't post about it. I'm saying don't let it frustrate you to the place that it ruins your relationships over a political thing.
Or for you to think that you're going to be the next activist voice in the world.
Yeah. So let me also package that with a caveat that says, like, you could be. But the reality is, like, you have to have the self-awareness and the self-examination to know if you actually are. And then you have to have the ability to, in a healthy way, decide what you can actually do to help. So, like, you want to shift politics or local problems, go to a city council meeting.
Yeah.
Actually be a part of it.
Actually put in it, because there's a little slip that says public comments. Go. And don't just go to one council meeting. Go to one every month for a year and bring up your issue.
Don't be a troll in the comment section. Go do something.
Meetings with local politicians who actually align with your views, and see who best represents your cause. And if you can't find anyone to represent your cause, you should apply for the district city council position or whatever it is, and you should get involved. You should go join the school board, because what it is, we have a bunch of fake activists. This is going to offend people, and you now, like, you would say, like, it's a virtue signal is what it is, where you shoot a flare up in the sky. You're like, check me out. I care. You don't care. If you cared, you'd be at the city council meeting. If you cared, you would be on the streets serving the homeless with us. And I get it. Life is busy. I have kids. I don't always want to be on the streets serving the homeless. Like, that's the reality. It's not always convenient for me. I have soccer games. I have church obligations. I have all this. But the reality is, like, I have to have the self-awareness then to say, like, oh, I care, but I realize there's other things I care about more.
Just in your lane.
So then now if you want to switch that priority and do something that changes things rather than being just another voice looking for an audience. So people clap. Oh, you care about an issue. Oh, you care.
God, sounds like you need a preacher on a Sunday about this or something.
You care about,
sounds like you're fired up.
Like, you care. You care enough to get an applause, and you really like the applause more than you care about changing the issue.
Yeah.
If we're being real.
There's like proactive ways
Do you
to
see what
like,
I'm saying?
go about
So
an
like,
issue
so we didn't even get into all this stuff, like how to confront issues, like outside the home and outside our person. Like, and this is where Moriah from the beginning said, I love confrontation. I actually genuinely, so when a lot of stuff over the last several years, so we're 2022, so dream about the last several years. Moriah was the one person I knew that if we got into a battle, like I go to the battle line and she's going to be right next to me shooting, taking fire, like shooting, and we're going to be connected, unified in battle. Why? Because she is a revolutionary.
Oh, wow.
Without a doubt. You are a revolutionary. You're a revolutionary thinker. You're a challenger, and you confront what we accept and what many people accept, and that's what makes you great in this area. And Matt also confronts culture. And that's part of why I invited both of you here. So as just the pastor, you confront culture. You're not okay with like going through motions and status quo. Like, you actually don't even long for worship stages if it's not authentic. Yeah. Like, and that's what makes your position so great is you don't want to be a worship guy on the spotlight as much as you want to see something done right. And like, for you, done right does not mean done perfect. It means done with great intention.
Yeah.
Like, you want it done with the best possible motives, and you want,
gotta confront the things.
Yeah. And so like both of you are brilliant at confronting issues. I would say where maybe Moriah can chill a little bit is like sometimes like, I think like,
give it
I don't love it. But I do it. You know what I mean? Like, and like for you, like you've become really good at like just doing the dishes and having the check-ins. But it takes maturity to do that over the years. So,
dang. Yeah,
and I'm still growing too. Like, the reality is, like, there's a lot of times, Shanna, I pick up my phone. Somebody will say something, and we're having dinner with a family or at a sporting thing or wherever we're at. Somebody will say something about an issue in the church, and I'll pick up my phone as a response, and I'll begin to type something out, and Shanna will actually come and grab my phone. She goes, "Don't do that. Just enjoy the moment." Like, she'll actually stop me from confronting. Because I talked about in a previous episode, impulsive, so I'll actually want to confront more than I don't want to confront. And I have to choose to set that aside. So for me, growing is actually having more patience with people. That's where my notes in my app is my best friend. I write it out, delete, write things out, delete. You guys don't know this, but for every leader in our church, I actually have a note with your name on it with all the stuff I've said. And all the confrontation we've had, like, you don't know that, like this. No, the reality is though, like, I'm gonna have to go back and reference it, and I don't keep I guess I do keep a record of wrongs, but like, the Bible literally says. So I'm confessing with no hypocrisy that I have no record of wrongs, but the reality is I actually do.
Literal record. Too.
Well, no, I think what it is, it's like an updated, like, because here's the problem. No, here's the problem is like, I'll say something and I move on and I forget what I said. So when I go back and there's an issue, I have no reference. Like, okay, what was the last thing I said to them? Like, what was the last thing that I actually put my integrity on? That's cool. That's what it is. So it's less to do with this. It's like, okay, so Matt, I asked you to do a certain thing. Now we're 4 months down the road and it dawns on me one day in prayer, like, what happened to that project? What did I say? I have to go back. What did I actually say to Matt? Like, that's where it's healthy for me to go back. And then I say, hey, Matt, can we have a conversation at 3 p.m. and you have no clue why? Yeah. I hate that. I'm just kidding.
I'll spend the whole day thinking about it.
Yeah. There you go. We ended with unhealthy confrontation again. The reality is confrontation's messy, and you have to have. There's a process.
Gotta love.
First, self-examination. Then crucify the agenda. Crucify all the other stuff, and simply move into a conversation with discovery, looking to find connection and solve a problem. Then from there, active feedback is very important on the issue. Is you both grow to figure out how to be good friends and good people together as you do life together. And then there comes a place where if someone is unbelievable, you just don't believe them. You know, like they've said it so many times and they've went back on it so many times or whatever. You do have to come to a place where you live in tension with those relationships and say, that's okay. So I'm not actually going to confront this anymore. That's a scarier place to be. Because when you don't have confrontation in a relationship, because you've exhausted all your means of confrontation, the relationship is nearly over.
It's hard.
Or it's hanging on by a string and you say,
this is just what it is.
It's just superficial now.
This is going to be what it's like. Yep. Maybe it can change, but this is like, I'm not going to expect more than this.
Yep. I know this is a very long episode, and I'm sorry, but I think the content was good. And so we're like an hour right now, so whatever.
Okay.
But
I listen to our podcasts.
I do too. Joe Rogan's like 3 or 4 hours, right? Disney. Okay. I know Matt Broden would be falling asleep, and Tony would be, I don't know, researching carnivore ideas on Pinterest. I don't know.
He's like, delete.
Yeah. He's like, smoked brisket, new recipe. Let's go. But yeah, so thank you for listening in. I hope this was worth your time. We genuinely want to help you, and we genuinely want to have discussions that are interesting to you and bring people on that are part of who we are as a church. And so I think that's where we're going. And Moriah is the host.
Today.
Yeah.
I'm chilling.
So today, it was more for fun. Yeah. But I'm glad you guys came. And Matt, you're doing an unbelievable job.
Thanks.
Growing as a guy who does dishes. God bless you guys. See you soon. Well, thank you for tuning in to I was about to say welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the Authentic Faith Podcast. See you soon.
Turning into a great guy that does the dishes.
Yeah, dude, I love it.